Welcome to Corporate Caffeine. I'm Dacia Coffee. As a chief marketing officer, speaker, author, copywriter, and three-time entrepreneur, I've learned a thing or two about influence and impact in the business world. So I want to share with you what I've learned about how to be heard, be seen, and be successful, and introduce you to the people I've met along the way who learned how to unlock their potential. Welcome to Corporate Caffeine. It's part 2 of Cher Hukill's story. More surprises coming your way, more hilarious anecdotes, and a huge dose of grace and forgiveness. You guys, today's surprise is going to take your breath away. Let's jump in.
It's a discipline. It's like running, right? You just have to be open. Just be open.
Yeah.
Just be open to a possibility. Be open to a blessing. If you lead with that and I don't, like I said, I don't mean like lie to yourself, but I mean, it's not lying to yourself. It's just like, okay, I'm open to a possibility.
Yes.
And just really opening yourself up. And it's really scary. You know, nobody wants to bear themselves. Nobody wants to not have control.
Yeah.
You know, people like we're taught in business and in sales specifically because I've done sales since I was like 16. That's like my first jobs, right? It's like being forceful. You know, I dated a stockbroker. We were engaged, and it was like I would listen to him on the phone, and he's like, "Well, Bob, you know, like, why don't you go get your balls back from your wife?" And you know, like very
the old
like,
school.
you know, just like really throwing somebody under the bus and like exploiting all of their insecurities and taking their manhood or whatever it is, and that would make the sale. I find that more often than not, I tried all of that, by the way. And I'm here to tell you that I actually did better in life. And my bottom line, my paychecks, and at the end of the year, I did better when I was empathetic and open and really listening to people and their needs and then being creative as to how we were going to meet them with whatever sale was, right?
Totally.
In the marketing. So it's a discipline. It's like running. You have to show up. You have to remind yourself. Listen, be open. And then it's the same thing with forgiveness. You know what I mean? You can't continually poison yourself and poison your body. If you're going to be open, you can't carry this resentment. Or you can, but you'll still find that you're heavy in your walk day to day.
Yeah.
It'll still come up. You're in that shadow self. It'll come up in business. It'll come up in that promotion. It'll come up in that conversation, that fight with your wife. It really permeates everything.
Yeah.
But if you're not aware and you're in this autopilot of unhappiness, like with your job and everything else, you're not even aware of any of that. And so you almost keep walking in stupidity. That's what I say. You're just blind.
100%.
But it is so scary to admit to yourself that you have something wrong. Or so I found myself in these dysfunctional relationships. And so it's one thing for me to say, oh, so-and-so was such a jerk, or he was selling drugs, or he was doing this or whatever. Okay, at what point, Cher, are you going to turn and look at yourself? You're the common denominator.
Yeah. Ugh,
You're the
so hard
dummy that keeps choosing this. So let's work on, and this is how I even arrived to this that helped me in my business, was I was actually dealing with my personal life. Was like, okay, I want to be happy one day, or I want to do this one day, or I want to be married one day. But look at my track record and all these people that I have chosen. Now, the way they treated me is irrelevant. That's their commonality, but why am I attracted to that?
Yes.
Right. And that's the same thing like in business. So how can you keep tripping yourself up for that promotion? What's the crap that you're telling yourself? What are you attracting? So words become thoughts become things.
100%.
And so I was literally somehow, I don't know, attracted to this, you know, like stuff. So it's like, it's a continual process. It's continually listening. It's continually forgiving.
Because we do.
Continually letting go.
We do opt into our reality, you know, and sometimes we create it or sometimes we disagree with it, even if we don't think so. But
we're somehow manifesting it in some way. We are all creators of our reality.
Yes.
You are an architect for your life. So somebody to say, oh, I can't do that. I can't is a bad word in my house. Like you can.
Love that.
And you will. Just by your sheer thoughts, words, anything. You're bringing all of that to yourself. So what I was telling myself is maybe this unworthiness, right? So I was continually putting myself in these romantic relationships where I was feeling not worthy, and this was the only thing I deserved was these, I don't want to say low lives because it's all relative.
Well, I think you're safe. I think you're safe to say it's a low life who's in jail forever, whatever it may be, who pours drugs around a daughter in a car seat's a low life, period.
This is what my book is about, because this is what is so crazy that people cannot wrap their minds around. He is one of my best friends to this day.
What?
We have had a complete turnaround, and it was by my own journey that I led by example for his own journey to happiness. That he has been clean. I forgave him. He would always say, "I know you hate me. I know you hate me."
Does he have a relationship with his daughter now?
He adopted my daughter, my second daughter, who is not even his. He has a fantastic relationship with my oldest daughter now. And we continue to co-parent in that aspect. I do have a level of PTSD that I'm still working through within relationships. And I know that I can't be in a relationship until I am able to conquer all of that.
That was one of my questions. Are you in one now? Or?
No, so it's a continual process of healing. And I find that by giving him an opportunity to be a father, we're also working through our stuff as well.
Yeah.
Now you have to kind of separate that. So he would try to fight with me and bring our stuff in to whatever we were parenting about. But it was my the things that I learned, my coping mechanisms in like the life enrichment boot camp that Citibank sent me to, the parenting classes I had to take, or the healing process that I had. I think first I had to admit to myself that I still loved him because I carried a lot of hate for him.
Yeah.
Well, you can't have that hate and anger that's coming from somewhere. Means you care, right?
Apathy is the thing that, like, once that's there, you do not care.
Yes.
You're out. So that's the danger. Yeah.
So I had to come to terms with that. So when I started to come to terms with that, and I was dealing with kind of like my own stuff, he would start saying these really unhealthy things or yelling. And I have to say, he didn't have a good relationship with his mother, and he was carrying out a lot of unhealthy things with me. He was putting me in that place. So I was like, okay, how can I parent him better? Because we're all, in a sense, reparenting ourselves. So I just started laying out the things that I was learning. And I don't know if he was a willing party. I don't know how to explain this to people in a way, because I'm not saying that every abuser is going to have that ability to change. I think it has to be a want within them. And he clearly wanted to. And so that I feel like, the turning point for our forgiveness. And our healing.
It's amazing.
He has since had a sit-down conversation with my daughter. I think within my healing, I was actually teaching a class in Chicago, and you were talking about crying to the bishop. I cried to a Chicago mob boss.
Oh.
So what was he doing there? Okay, hold on a minute. Back up.
I was teaching. So my dad is a history teacher. We love true crime, specifically with the mafia. And I was like, I can't go to Chicago and not look at the St. Valentine's Day massacre site or something like that. So it's like history. And I love old history in that kind of like Rat Pack time and era, and where women dressed up and men were so dapper. And so I went up there, and I had started not feeling really good on the flight. And I was like, you know what? My job may not send me here again. I'm going to look this up. I'm going to go on a mob tour. So I started reading all these reviews, and they were just like, these tours were kind of stupid. They had these theater kids giving them. And then there was one that stuck out, and it says, get a mob tour by a real mob boss. I was like, I'm there, sign me up. I popped 2 Tylenol sinus, and I headed out.
Oh my gosh, Cher, only you. Like, I would be like, nope, I'm out. And you'd be like, I'm in.
I'm like, this is fantastic. I was like, I want it from the story from the core. So
how many people were on this tour?
Oh, God,
hopefully
like
it was more
40.
than just you. Oh, okay.
Yes.
It wasn't like, it's me and you, girl.
Exactly.
No. Like, you board this party bus, if you will, and it starts at this Bob's Chop House in downtown
Okay.
Chicago. And it says, do not be late. The bus waits for no man. Like, this is a strict rule. Like, and he gives this tour himself. Well, my Lyft driver was on another level. I think he was just trying to get more money or whatever. He was on a slow ride, taking it easy.
Oh.
And so I was 10 minutes late. And the mob boss, his name is Frank Calabrese Jr., he told me that something told him that day to just stay and wait. But he is a staunch, like, hardcore person, like, sticking to a schedule. So he was like, you know what? Certain things happen to where they couldn't take off on time, and they just happened to still be there when I got there. And I'm running down the street, and I'm like, wait. And I see this guy, and he's like 6'4", huge jacked guy standing outside, and he says with his accent, like, you got real lucky today, kid. So I file into this bus, and everybody's staring at me like, oh, we waited for her. And I sit in the back by myself, and we go through, and he's telling this whole story of these landmarks of, like, this is where this happened here, but it's no longer there. And then he starts telling his own story. So he actually has a book out, and you can look him up. His name is Frank Calabrese Jr., and he single-handedly brought down the Chicago Mafia by wearing a wiretap and turning in his father while they were in prison.
What?
And he starts telling the story about
I wouldn't be in Chicago anymore, by the way. If I did that, I'd get my butt out of
he
there.
lives in Arizona.
Oh, well, you just gave it away.
His dad had passed away in prison.
Oh, really?
So he never got back out. So he's telling his own story, but he was also talking about the breakdown of his own marriage and how him selling drugs, because that was the one thing the mafia didn't do and did not condone, was the selling of, like, cocaine. So he was big in the 80s, and he thought, I'm going to be a party guy and all the women or whatever, and he married his wife, but he was still dealing, and his own father tried to kill him. So he's telling the story, and then he's also saying about how, like, he had went away to prison, his wife divorced him, ran off, took the kids. So very reminiscent of kind of like my story as well. Like, she was really finding out what he was doing, and, you know, was like, I can't live this life anymore. It was essentially my own story. And then, but they also had this very tumultuous relationship. So he tells it from his perspective of how he felt in jail. And I feel like he's talking to me. Oof. And I had never had a conversation with my ex-husband about how much pain it caused me to be ripped away and have all these things happen. And he was a user, which is why there was a lot of domestic violence and unhealthiness and you know, tons of fights and whatnot. So he's telling the story. I feel like he's talking to me, but I hear this voice of, this is like my ex-husband's perspective of how this happened. So everybody files off the bus, and I'm in the back, so I get off last. And I stand there, and I tell him my own story, and I'm bawling. And I was like, I feel like I was put here in this moment by God, because this is the last piece of this anger and resentment and this hatred I have for this man. Wow. That I'm hanging on to, and I'm tired and I'm weary of carrying it around. I want to be a happy person, but I can't preach positivity, and I'm just still hanging on to this. And so this mafia boss, who's like 6'4", he's jacked. He just holds me and he lets me cry. Oh, and he's like, we just have this connecting moment, and he's crying, and he's like, I'm going to give you a book, and he signs it, and then he signs one for my dad, and then he pretty much tells me to go and talk to my ex-husband. So I come home from this trip, and I'm like, look, it just happened in conversation. I was like, I met this mob boss, and we have a very similar story. So my ex-husband, the drug indictment that he's in, he's actually in the same indictment as Sammy the Bull Gravano. So his indictment stemmed from not only this country, but the Netherlands and across the United States, and also involved him. So it was a conspiracy indictment. It was federal. So he really, really got himself in trouble. So Frank, still to this day, calls me New York for New York Mafia. He's like, yo, she's family. Like, I'm like, stop telling these people to get off the bus. I'm a professional. I'm a corporate woman. Yeah. I'm a mother of two. Like, yeah. You know, I'm like, try to close my jacket, like pretend I'm this demure little woman. And I have this like totally gangster story.
Yes.
Which even voluntary, wasn't trying to get wrapped up in the mafia. You know what I mean? So again, my life is a series of traumas and dramas. And so I'm sitting there, and he taught me something in that moment of I was too busy hating and never stopped to hear the other side. And it was a powerful healing moment. So when I came home, I told him the story, and it opened up this line of communication where we're both laughing because 10 years has already passed at this point from when he had gotten in trouble and all this stuff has happened.
Now, is he locked up now still, or is he's out? I mean, it sounds like he's out.
He's out. So he went away to federal, and then when he got back out, he got in trouble again, which was the drug deal that he took my daughter on. So he went back again. So he was gone for a total of 10, almost 11 years. So within that program, the federal puts you through, it was RDAP. So it was, I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it has to do with, he also had to go through like, what is it when, like rehab. Mm-hmm. He had to be like totally rehabilitated and had to go through therapy and all this other stuff. And what kind of, I guess, lingered was us talking about our stuff. So we had never talked about anything that had happened. I just packed up my car one day and left.
Yeah.
And so it was all this unfinished stuff that we had to talk about.
Incredible.
So he's out. And again, my second daughter's dad, he's a real winner. Anyway, long story short, he opted out when she was very young, and we haven't seen him since she was about 5 months old.
Wow.
So my ex-husband was also abandoned by his mom, and he looked at her and was like, I don't care how you feel about me. And I was like, I just want to let you know we're not getting back together. But he's like, she is calling me dad because she hears my oldest daughter calling him dad. And he goes, don't correct her. And I'm like, I'm not going to lie to her, but that's who he is to her. So it gave him an opportunity to, I guess, show up where he didn't show up before.
Right.
Gave him an opportunity to actually be a father where he wasn't one before.
Wow.
And he was given an opportunity in that way, and then subsequently it healed and is healing currently, because I don't think it's fully healed, the relationship that he has with my oldest. And he asked her permission if she would mind if he became my youngest daughter's dad.
Wow.
So it was super powerful, the whole transformation. But had I still carried this hatred and, core hatred and resentment for this man, I felt like every good thing that I'd ever had was ripped away by him.
Yeah.
My whole fairy tale, my whole everything. And I had to become a mom in such terrible circumstances. He made my life so hard. And then to find this forgiveness was so powerful. And I didn't realize how much it affected me in my job.
Yeah.
So
that is not a straight line, a direct correlation, because of course you're thinking, this is my personal life, this is what's happening over here. Mm-hmm. It's not self-evident that it translates, correlates, and impacts what's happening in your work life, or any of the other facets of your world. Wow.
But it will correlate. Yeah. You're going to take the same... No one can just turn a switch completely off for over half a day.
Yeah, those paths intersect.
They will, and they do. You can't... It will catch up with you sooner or later.
It manifests somehow, right? Yeah. So it's like this hatred I have towards my ex-husband. Or maybe it's not that. Maybe it is feeling small or not having a voice or being overpowered. And then it's showing up at my job. But nobody knows about my personal life at home. They just see me as a woman acting erratic and emotional at my job. And all of a sudden you're the crazy Karen at work.
Yes.
But nobody has any idea as to the trauma that you went through as a child. And it's not like you're on the couch and they could click the pen and you can tell everybody so they can have this empathy towards you. Like, no. So it bleeds over.
So on the flip side, okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just wondering, when you're doing makeup, do you talk about these things to your clients? Because I've got my hair done, Well, a little bit less now than I ever have. But anyways, and you hear these stories and you're just going, oh my gosh, I'm only going to be here for like 15 minutes, but
this is riveting or whatever, right?
crazy.
So,
like, do you tell your stories? I mean, I know people get to know you, especially if you do the same clients all the time. You get to know each other.
Well, what's crazy about my line of work is I might have the same clients, but they're like corporate clients or whatever. So, or the same models. And so you'll talk to them for 5 or 10 minutes and you get to know them or whatever. Well, I think with opening myself up to possibilities and just blessings, right? I open myself up to an experience every day. So I wake up every morning and I say a prayer to God that I encounter people of like mind and like heart on my walk, right? And so I just open myself up to this wild ride of an experience for the day, and it's kind of exciting. And so what I found happens is when you kind of open yourself up, you don't really, like, obviously you have a schedule, but you don't steer or control conversations. So I work with a lot of people, and they love to talk about what it is that they do or what they've accomplished or who they've worked with or whatever. Sure. I don't. I listen. Because I learned this working or living in a domestic violence shelter when I left my first husband.
How long were you there for?
I happened to get stuck in the system. I went the day before Thanksgiving, and because of the holidays, I did not get out until the 3 days or a week after New Year's. When you go into a domestic violence shelter, the idea is to give you therapy so that you continue to go to therapy so you can stay out of this relationship. But they also help you get into a safe housing, whether it's like an apartment or, whatever. And so usually it shouldn't take more than like 3 weeks or a month or whatever, but because of the holidays, I got stuck there. And if I really wanted to get my own place, which I needed the financial assistance they offered me, I needed to still participate in the program and stay there. And I just wanted so bad to be able to have a different outcome that I stayed.
Yeah.
Do you know that she's on the board at the Women's Center in Tarrant County?
I did not know that, but
really?
I still volunteer and give back, me and my daughter.
That's amazing. That is awesome.
So I make over women sometimes, like at Christmas.
Yeah.
Or I have volunteered at the nursing homes and the memory care unit.
Yes.
There's so much that goes into being a woman, how we feel, our self-esteem. So this is where this was born from. When I was in the domestic violence shelter, obviously it was at Christmas, they took a group of us to a church, and these women who I didn't know, who just attended the church, gave us manis and petties. Somebody had donated all of these little pedicure bowls, like the jets and everything. And I cried because at the time I was very successful. I was working at a bank. I had a very good job, but I was there because of circumstance.
Yep.
Because it wasn't safe for me to be at home.
Yep.
And so here's this woman who does not even know me, who is loving on me. And I felt unworthy. I felt I should be able to have done this myself, but why would anybody else love me in this moment?
Wow.
Why would anybody else want to do this nice thing for me?
Yeah.
And these women didn't even know me. So this woman, and there was a ton of people there that I've had friends, not even knowing my situation or my background, ask me to donate my time to give back to like a nursing home.
Yeah.
So I took my oldest daughter, and I've always reminded her of kind of like where we have come from and that we needed to give back. So we went and painted nails. She painted these old ladies' nails at the nursing home. She was like 7 or 8 years old. And I did their hair and I did their makeup.
That's
just
awesome.
Giving back to make people feel
matters
better. And I did that also at a domestic violence shelter local to Dallas.
Not to be in your business, but your story alone would resonate to what those women are going through, especially younger ones are going through that.
I was so ashamed. I had so much
Oh my gosh, though, if they can hear what
shame.
you've been through and where you're at now, there's hope.
It has been years and years and years and years. And I just, within the last 2 years, felt okay with talking about it.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
Without crying
Yeah.
or without
Okay.
being self-conscious that judgment was being passed on me, because it was like, how the hell did you get yourself into this situation?
Right.
You know what I mean?
I've never
Yeah.
thought once sitting here. I think sympathy, like first thing. It's never been, how did you get yourself into that situation?
Isn't that funny, the things we tell ourselves?
It's so true.
Seriously.
You know?
It's so true.
Yeah. But I felt...
Or inspired too. You know, going, wow,
Thank you.
this is...
It was...
Sympathy is probably the wrong word. Felt more inspired than anything. Yeah.
I found myself reliving these experiences with different people and different faces. Okay, so I found myself at an agency. So the agency that I'd signed with after I found the cojones to leave my corporate job, this woman kind of exploited me. She knew that I was a single mom and I needed a job and I needed money. And you're self-employed, so I was still trying to hustle on the side and do makeovers and stuff like that. But it was... she would say, I know this is your hobby or this is your fun, but I'm running a company. Or she would try to push me at a lower rate than everybody else. And I felt so unworthy, like who else was going to want me? I never left. I stayed there for like 10 years.
Wow.
And I was just continually being taken advantage of, but I didn't have the courage to leave there because I thought that was it.
Yeah. Exactly. Unworthy. Like that storyline just continuing to manifest and play out.
Do you technically work for yourself now? Or do you work through
So I've always worked for myself. So even being a mortgage professional, I was 1099.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So what was really funny is that I couldn't pass regular math in high school. So they put me in the dummy math, quote unquote, which is called math of money, which was the most genius thing that they could have ever done, and it applied it to real life. So I couldn't get past algebra 1. So they put me in this math of money so I could pass high school. So I learned how to do taxes, long form, like writing them out.
Shoot me. Oh my God.
This is excellent.
I learned how to balance a checkbook, how to do all of this stuff, right?
Yes.
And so my birthday's in July, so I'm a young graduate.
Yeah.
So I was 17, just turned 17, or something like that when I graduated. Anyway, so I know how to do taxes. I know how to do payroll, how to do all of this stuff when I graduated. I didn't know what the heck I was going to do with it. I just loved money, and money made sense to me.
Yeah.
I could add and subtract and do all this stuff.
It's the one thing they should teach everybody.
Everybody.
And this is all businesses. If you can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, that's all you need to know.
So
Why they do trigonometry, all
I
this
agree.
crazy stuff, algebra has nothing to do with keeping the books.
none.
And I'm sitting here, the older I'm going, okay, now, is there a certain?
Like, what's the application
is
to real life?
Yeah.
Yeah, period.
Yeah. Totally.
My daughter was doing math. This is in college, and it's how many lemons does it take to power a jet engine, and then how many miles does it take to get from here to London, and then how many lemons do you need to get there?
Okay.
I can't say this without saying the curse word that she said. But she's like, how the F? Why the hell do I need to know
Did
this?
Elon Musk all of a
Exactly.
sudden start powering things with lemons?
Exactly.
You know?
Teach that math when you're going to be an engineer or
Yeah,
flight
yeah.
or a pilot, or flight tracker
Thought
or whatever,
process
right?
and
But
all
why
that.
does
I get it.
everyone have to go through
Nobody
stuff?
is. Right,
I know.
exactly.
Absolutely.
So what we're missing out on these days, and I would volunteer just in an effort to be really close to my daughter at her school. They cut out specials at school. So they've cut out choir and they've cut out art in a lot of the schools in Dallas, specifically DISD. So I volunteered at her school to teach art, which that's what my mom was my art teacher.
Wow.
And so
Was your mama an artist?
my mom is an artist. She does realistic portraits and landscapes and stuff like that.
Wow.
With barrel pencils and also watercolor. But she never succeeded at it, which is why she was like, you're going to die and starve if you become an artist, right?
Yeah.
So, not really thinking like, hey, you just have to be savvy to be able to monetize this. So,
Right.
I was helping, my daughter, but our society is geared towards being a YouTube star, or a rapper, or an athlete. you can still make $35 an hour being a plumber. Like, who doesn't want that?
And a lot more even. Absolutely.
Have a construction job. We don't have wood shop anymore.
Nope.
We don't have automotive.
No. And
What's the one
We don't
thing-
even have home ec.
that is the future millionaires of this society, are
They
the
can't
people that are
cook.
willing
They can't
to
do anything.
use their hands and get dirty and bring value to people. Like, oh my goodness.
It's from right around our age group. We still did that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them that would get out of school and they just automatically would do electricity, construction, any of those type of things, make a living at it,
They
start
end
their own
up being
businesses.
a business owner and making more money than any of us
Any
had.
of
Yes.
us. Then you have a gap, and there's a huge gap out there. And
It was
it's
that
starting to catch
everybody
up.
has to go to college.
And here's
mantra.
how you know it's catching up. Get on the phone, call up a painter, a drywaller, anybody, and say, hey, I got a job for you. It's going to take over 2 months in DFW
They're
to
so
get somebody
busy.
out there.
Yep.
They're so busy they can't, and there's no one filling those gaps. There's no one's willing to learn.
I saw this meme.
It's amazing.
And it was a woman, and she says, I want to go somewhere expensive. And then the next meme is him and her with like a makeshift table in the wood aisle at Home Depot. I don't know if any of y'all have tried to build a fence right now, but that's
We actually tabled the fence that we were supposed to do this year because of that exact thing.
Well,
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, wait, it'll go back down. It's fine.
I
doing that.
bankrolled a
Yeah.
fence, and let me tell you how rich I made that
Oh,
contract.
it's awful.
And there's no one to do it for months and months. It took him 2 months to get to my house,
Yeah.
and they're just turning stuff down left and right.
Yep.
A fencer 20 years ago were a dime a dozen.
Oh, I know.
Driving the worst pickups. They drive $100,000 trucks now and can't get to you for
Yeah,
2 months.
back in the day, you would knock
Yeah.
when you saw a hole in the wall or in the hole in the fence saying, hey, you see that? Do you want me to fix it? Like, you're the hustle.
Yep.
Like, you're
So what do you do for fun?
I am a science nerd and Harry Potter fan.
nice.
I love like fantasy movies and stuff like that, and I watch them with my daughter. What we do for fun is I like knowledge. So I would take college classes for fun, just to have something to do.
That's awesome.
I go to church. That's like my social hour.
Activate your brain.
I activate my brain. But I was so disenchanted with religion
Yeah.
and with spirituality,
Different.
given my whole life. I wanted to know why.
Yeah.
Why does everybody believe in this imaginary person, right? So I ended up, my parents were hippies, hence my name Cher, and they went to a metaphysical church on a nudist colony when I was a kid.
Shut up.
Swear to God.
This story
Hold on, didn't you
just
say your
never.
dad was 300 pounds?
amazing.
And
Yeah.
This had to have been an awkward sight for some folks.
No, so a lot of the people that actually lived on this colony
Yeah.
were nudists. We never really saw them around, but there was a group that met once a month in the cafeteria of this kind of campground, and we all wore clothes, and we kind of hung out in like the back room. There was older kids that watched us younger ones, and we were kind of like a little family, and we learned how to meditate. I learned how to meditate by the time I was 7.
Wow.
I learned about astral travel and thought transference by the time I was like 10.
Whoa.
And so I renounced all of that because when we moved from California to Texas, this is where we were going to church when we moved to Texas. My mom met this woman when she was working at the VA hospital when she was pregnant with me. And so we moved back to California where I was born, and then we moved back to Texas when I was like 3 or 4. And so I started going to this church. Well, when we moved back to California, when we moved back, I was older, 10 or 11. All the kids are going to Young Life, and I was the weird kid whose parents believed in reincarnation. And these kids were like, let me evangelize you.
Right.
And I was horrified.
Right.
And on top of that, my grandmother was like a staunch Catholic. Like, let's read all the prayer cards and do all the Hail Marys. And so I was just confused. And so my mom was like, hey, find your way. She allowed me to kind of go out and have like a God filter is what she called it. Find what resonated with me and filter out the rest. So falling in line with that, I didn't all these bad things happened, and I just became disenchanted with the whole thing and religion. And I was like, this totally stinks. So coming back to forgiveness and wanting to be happy kind of brought me kind of curved back around to spirituality. And so I was listening to Good Morning America, and there was a congressman who was taking courses for free from this Ivy League school. He always wanted to be a writer, but his parents wouldn't let him. He had to go into politics. So he was taking writers classes, writing classes, creative writing.
Why would you force someone to go to politics when they?
Why did my parents want me to be a doctor? I don't know. I don't even know. But so they were talking about this website called Coursera. So I get on there and I was like, well, what the hell do I want to learn? So I started taking theology classes.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I wanted to, so I started taking a soul beliefs class from the University of New Mexico. And then I took an astrobiology class from the University of Edinburgh in Scotland or Wales? University of Edinburgh in the UK. And my daughter was having trouble studying. And I was like, look, I'll do it with you and we'll study together. So I pop in my earbuds and do these modules online and learn with her. And so that's what I did in my free time.
Wow.
Which is so absolutely weird. So now whenever I go to church, I'm listening to what he's saying, and I'm listening to the word and what is written out in the Bible. I had never read the Bible growing up.
Most people haven't.
So it was very new to me. But I'm also looking at it through the lens of these classes that I had taken as to why we believe the things that we believe.
Yeah.
And then also filtering through it to apply it to my own life. So I go to a non-denominational church now.
Yeah.
But having given the understanding that I have of all of this, philosophies like Buddhism and Taoism, and I started studying like Carl Jung. Like I went back to psychology.
Yeah.
And then back to religion. And then when she was studying math, I found the correlation between math and science and spirituality and how that kind of like quantum physics. Like this is the girl who couldn't pass math in high school, and I'm studying
quantum physics.
Yeah.
Quantum physics for fun.
It's incredible. Oh my goodness.
But I don't even know that that's fun. I was doing Zumba. My kids asked me to teach them how to twerk. Like, so I'm still that woman
she just
too.
gave it away. She knows how to twerk because they asked her how to. Hey, Mama, show me how to twerk.
She's like, I know you have a past life in like this, like fun, life. So I don't know. I think as a parent, we get derailed, and you don't know where your life ends and where your kid's life starts.
Yeah, yeah.
I always go down chase a squirrel like every podcast, I think, so far, which there ain't been many. But do your parents still walk around the house naked?
They did. They were not the nudist.
So they were not the nudist, but I also grew up with very like, this is my body, girls have this, boys have that. Like, it wasn't a secret. It wasn't like, clutch the pearls, like somebody is naked. Like, everybody has a body, everybody has a vagina, everybody has, or whatever. So it wasn't like weird. But my mom, now that you say that, mom did walk around. She'd walk around the house more so because she was having hot flashes in like a tank top, and she'd like this crazed look in her eye and like hot, and it was more of like, where's the fan? Why is it so hot in here? And we're all shivering. I looked like a little refugee when I was little. I was a skinny little thing with like no fat on me. So I'm like, I don't know, but why is it so cold?
So with makeup today and traveling around the world and working with all these interesting people, where do you want to go from here? I mean, like, is it enough to just be happy every day? Do you have, you're writing a book, like, what's your vision for somebody who has seen and been and accomplished and overcome?
I feel like there's so much that I haven't done, but I was actually telling my dad this morning, so like, I've been getting like some writer's block, and I was dealing with more imposter syndrome because it was like, okay, if I write this or if I teach this class on my own, what makes me an expert?
Yeah, I've been there.
But I have this long resume of stuff, and it was people pointing it out to me. Like, you've made over world leaders and celebrities and athletes and all of this. So to go back to your question, like, when did I think I made it? I was actually, I would say this is like 2012. I started working for Fox Sports, and I found myself down on the baseball field at the Ranger Stadium and in the locker room. And I'm taking pictures and I'm sending it to my dad. And even when I decided I was going to be a makeup artist, he would still send me these job ads for Wells Fargo.
Oh my God.
And he's like, Wells Fargo's hiring. He thought that I was just bullshit all day.
It shows the Ranger. You're a coach.
Yeah. He's like, look. And so I sent him, these pictures, and I'm like, Dad, guess where I am? And he's like, yeah, I've been there, whatever. And so I was like, when I figured out that I'd made it, it was like two instances, which I've worked on runway shows with the Italian couture design team from Dolce & Gabbana.
Yeah.
That wasn't even an aha moment for me. It was when ESPN emailed me out of nowhere and says, we've heard about you, and we want you to work on this 30 for 30 documentary.
I love those.
I do too.
Yeah.
Literally one of my
Best
favorite
storytelling
things.
ever.
I love that. And so to feel like this little girl from California, Texas, like the small podunk town, that they knew about me
Oh, yeah.
and asked for me specifically to work on this program, I was like, woohoo!
Yes.
So it was a rival high school team from the team that my dad coached. It was Carter High School, 1989, the team that robbed more places than Bonnie and Clyde. They were the last team to win the state championships, right? Okay, they were stripped of that title because most of the football team got arrested.
Yeah.
And it's also what Friday Night Lights is based off of.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Okay.
Exactly.
South Oak Cliff just won their first state championships that a Dallas school has won. And especially that demographic in over 50 years, right?
Yeah.
Because Carter High School got stripped of this, it was never on the record books counted as happening. These kids.
Your dad coached at Carter?
My dad coached at Woodrow Wilson in East Dallas during the whole Carter thing. So,
okay.
It was such a big deal because a Dallas team had not won a state championship since 1958, which now South Oak Cliff has now taken that title. But Carter High School had actually won it and got stripped of it in 1989. And the 30 for 30 documentary is about all of these guys who were actually committed to the NFL, to all of these like schools to go play, and then they were like gods in their town.
Yep.
But they were literally robbing Jack in the Boxes and ponchos in their BMWs that their parents had bought for them, rims and whatever, and that's how they got caught.
I've heard this story. I've heard nuggets, but I haven't seen it. I need to go look it up.
It's great. So my dad actually was one of the football coaches at another high school, and so they were passing around the trial transcripts as like a warning to these other coaches to share with their players. It's like, hey, this is what's going on in the courtroom. You want to, as like a cautionary tale, really.
Yeah.
My dad has held on to these transcripts and didn't know why for 30 plus years and still had them laying around in his house. So I get called for this ESPN 30 for 30. And I'm like, woohoo, Dad, guess what? Looking for his approval. And he's like, this is amazing. Oh my God, I have these trial transcripts. Let me see if I can find them. So
I have goosebumps.
Not even knowing the full story of what had happened, I asked the executive producer, hey, this is so crazy. I'm so happy to be on this project. My dad was actually a coach in DISD during this time. They played Carter High School.
I bet he freaked out.
This guy was like, what? That's amazing. And I said, yeah, my dad says he even still probably has a tax trial transcripts. And the guy goes, that's the one thing that I have not been able to find.
No.
And he says, we've been digging through county records, right?
Most of them
they were
minors.
16, 17, and 18 years old. And so he goes, we haven't been able to find them. And my dad's like, hold my beer. He's like digging through all this crap that he's had in a briefcase that he's carried around that my mom has nagged him about. He goes, I don't know why I've hung on to these, but here they are. And he provided them to the production team. Well, they then allowed my dad to come on set, and he was able to talk to his old teacher buddies and people who were in the athletic department and the superintendents and all these guys who played football with my dad's friends and everything. He was able to come on set. To see the look on my dad's face, I did that for him.
Yeah.
I made it.
Yeah.
And he accepted me, and it was no longer I was playing around.
Yeah.
Like I was doing things.
Yeah.
And he saw me.
That's awesome. So it was still your dad's approval.
It was still my dad's approval.
Wow. Oh my God. Absolutely incredible.
So the next one was when they called me to work with Terry Bradshaw. And that was still like the same thing. Dad, guess what?
Guess who I'm going to work with? Yeah.
So cool. So cool. But it was the mafia guy who then asked me to do his 60 minutes, makeup. It was then after that, I was like just giving myself permission to succeed and bask in these small successes.
Yeah.
I was still that little girl that was not worthy. So when it was like that small little thing, then I was able to really enjoy. I got called, Dolce & Gabbana, their couture houses never left Italy. These designers actually left Italy, and they weren't going to Paris and they weren't going to New York. They came to Dallas, Texas, to the Windspear Opera House to do this out-of-the-box, huge fall and winter runway show. And I was part of the team that got to do this. And people are yelling at me in Italian. And I am loving it.
Oh my gosh.
It's crazy. So it's in so many different aspects. I've been able to work in TV and makeup and stuff like that. And what I want to do now is like, I've done so much. I've now been doing this for professionally since 2009. In this aspect, I've worked in reality TV. I've worked on different franchises. I've been to New York. I've traveled the East Coast. I've traveled the West Coast. I've done stuff internationally. I've had stuff published in Japan and France and all these places. I think right now I want to continue what I'm doing. I want to have a school, which I'm in the middle of building online courses with my dad.
Nice.
What's the school going to be for?
So I have
or?
something for makeup, but also artists are artists first, entrepreneurs last. So me and my dad dug up this idea. Y'all don't come for my domain name, okay, after that. But it's called the Global Prosperity University. And teaching just these snippets of things that I've learned with perception and power of positivity and what I've learned from being an entrepreneur and sales and all these things, and putting them in different modules that people can do kind of like an a la carte thing online to do a continuing education, kind of like Coursera, like I did. The things that I couldn't learn in school, but I wanted to learn after school. So maybe it's a confidence course. My dad always told me the story about Wally Pipp. He told me don't be a Wally Pipp.
Yeah,
okay?
I know Wally Pipp. Well, I'm a baseball guy.
You're a baseball guy, right? So I still tell those stories to my artists. And I've taught the history of makeup at cosmetology schools. And I've been told that my storytelling and my way of being able to teach, they learned more about history and felt more educated and more accepted and more open. They learned more from me than they did from public school.
I believe it.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of give back. So not only do I want to like teach, I'm in the process of putting my makeup 101 courses like online. But it's not just learning makeup, because anybody can do that from YouTube for free. It's how to become an entrepreneur, how to become sustainable, how to monetize that. And then alternately, all of the things that I'm talking about within makeup can be applied to real life. So transferring that over to the Global Prosperity University and having my dad talk and tell some of these stories that he has in teaching and these lessons that he's learned as a coach, teaching those there.
Yes.
And becoming a writer. Sorry.
I know that everyone, starts things for money and for a business, but that would be an incredible nonprofit. People would donate towards that. Like, just the name alone just seems to me like, oh my gosh, this is like how a lot of people got started who have money now, who doesn't necessarily learn it through a university, learns it through mentors, and learns it through
Podcasts or
everything. And it's just like,
life experiences and meeting mafia bosses and, listening to other people's, life stories. Yes.
Yeah. So I still had this imposter syndrome, and I met this woman named Mitzi Perdue, who is the heiress to Sheraton Hotels, and she's the widow of the man who owned Perdue Chicken. Which we still buy all of that chicken today. Yeah. When her husband died, he was worth $834 billion. I can't even wrap my mind around that number.
Ditto.
She is, in her own right, amazing, and an heiress as well. But she is also a journalist and a published author. And I made her over for a TV show. And I was just talking to her in conversation and never in a million years had the courage to even write my story down. And she was talking to me about her own dysfunctional relationship. And I was telling her my story. This was their first husband.
Yeah.
And she said, if you don't become a public speaker, I'm going to kill you. She would, but it was something different coming from her. It was like hit different. I'm like, this woman has like made it. She's super successful. She's, been in like 400 TV shows, written like 22 books. And she goes, I want you to call the National Speakers Association. I want you to give them my name. So for me, it was like having that energy back me. I don't know what it was. It was like giving myself permission to succeed.
Yes.
So since that actually happened in March, I started writing. And my dad
this year?
Yeah.
Amazing.
My dad has always pushed me to write because I wanted to be a creative writer in school. And he always told me how great I was at it. Well, I went through this whole period of hating my parents or whatever, not listening. I'm like, you have to tell me that. But then hearing it from someone else, I was like, you know what? I'm starting to feel it in my bones, these long days and all of that. So I'm like, what am I going to do next? I'm going to write because nobody can take away that cerebral intellect or knowledge that I have. My body's going to break down. So what's my third act?
Yeah, that's right.
I'm going to write. I'm going to teach people. I'm going to lift up everyone.
Oh, I love it. It's absolutely incredible.
So I want to be a research storyteller like Brene Brown.
I'm pretty sure you're already on your way, babe.
Write your own story. Like to say, okay, Brene Brown. Okay. Like she's made it. But you have your own thing. Like you don't have to say, wow, I want to be like so-and-so.
There's nothing wrong with having heroes.
Oh, I know.
Sure.
But to have a hero is, when I coached little kids, I was just like, look, you have what you consider a role model. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's dangerous. I was like, yeah, you want to be as good as them, but you got to be your own person.
Absolutely.
Like, create your own model, not someone else's. Just do the habits that they do, maybe. That got them there. Yeah. But you have to turn the switch within yourself because someone's going to look at you different one day than them.
So I'm going to offer you this little tidbit and kind of leave you with this. So I've been reading this book, and this is what helped me tremendously. It's called The Alter Ego by Todd Herman. And he talks about creating an alter ego for yourself. So would Batman keep telling himself, you can't do this, or you're not going to scale that wall, or you're not going to do that, right? So he has actually coached like major league athletes. He's actually spoke alongside Bo Jackson and has talked about the power of the alter ego that gets yourself over these like insecurities. And he's actually like a coach and like a teacher. And he talks about how, like your role model, you can't exactly be them. But in the moment when you're playing that game and when you're like, let's say you're a football player and you're out on the field and you're just shaking these guys that you're up against are twice your size, right? Putting yourself in like a video game or becoming invincible and just like blowing through people, right? Like you just get out of your head and you put yourself into this other place. Like Beyonce had Sasha Fierce.
Yes.
It's the zone.
Yes.
It's the zone, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so I was dealing with this like heavy imposter syndrome, and then just kind of stumbled upon this book. Another friend of mine who was in finance, but was also a big sports fan, was like, dude, you got to read this book. And it came full circle for me that I was like, again, sports is fueling my life, like all these little lessons that I've learned, but then, having this alter ego to kind of get through this book is just transformative. It's like giving yourself permission to be a kid again.
That's amazing.
And becoming creative and creating your own life and being you don't have to do with what the story is that was written for you. You can write your own. And if you don't have the courage to do it yourself, well, you can take a little bit from Superman or a little bit from Batman or make your own Sasha Fierce. Do you see what I'm saying? To fuel your life.
It's absolutely everything you are doing and who you continue to become and what you're teaching. It's so
I didn't even know it was a
unbelievable.
thing.
It's so beautiful.
It's like an out-of-body experience, right? Like sometimes it's so crappy. If you took stock and inventory of all of these things that you have had done in your life, you would probably fall down and like die. You'd be overwhelmed with such negativity, right?
Yeah.
But to almost have this out-of-body experience, pull yourself out of that.
Yeah.
And survey it from above and go, okay, where do I want to be? And how am I going to get there? Well, you kind of can create this vehicle for yourself by this alter ego. And so I was kind of already doing that and didn't really know. But then it kind of gave me this permission to be a Batman or a Superwoman or She-Ra or whatever.
Yes.
And power through all that.
So this is kind of a loaded question. It's two parts. But the first one is, you have like made it in makeup.
Yeah.
Like 100%. Have you felt that zone while you're doing that of like when you're doing your art on somebody where you're like, oh my gosh, I hit it. I've got it. Like I'm in this level. No one's going to teach me at this point.
So I learned a long time ago that when you feel like you cannot be taught, no one's going to teach you, you plateau and you will no longer succeed. Because
But you don't
know
think
everything.
of other creative ways that no one's thought of things?
So this is what I do is like I collect like history books and I love eras and different times and stuff like that. I feel like people are so accepting of being told what stuff is.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so that can be applied to makeup. You have to have a highlighter. You have to have a blush. You have to have a primer. Well, what the hell did you do back in the day when those things weren't even invented?
Right, exactly.
You made it.
Yeah.
You made it, right? So it's kind of, I think things have become so complicated. Let's just strip everything back. Let's just get naked, if you will. And let's just go back to the drawing board and give yourself permission to be a kid.
Yeah.
And so whenever I go to
Play.
work, like I just did a global ad campaign for Mary Kay for their oil-free makeup remover, which is their number one selling product. And the assignment was to create a bold look. Well, they gave me this like very basic pumpkin spice latte everyday like color palette to work with. But their inspiration picks were bold colors and abstract shapes on the eye, and I'm like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? So then it was like, okay, what do I have and what can I make? And I think some artists would be so confined to a box.
Yeah.
There are some younger ones that are like, well, they didn't give me a gel liner. Well, they didn't give me this, and I don't have this in here. And then limiting yourself. And for me, I'm like, okay, how am I going to make this?
Yeah.
How am I going to be successful? And what am I going to do? So anyway, just making it.
Yeah.
Just give yourself permission to be kind of, to be creative. I think I have just totally gotten off subject.
No, and I love it because those constraints like bring out your creativity.
Well,
so
no,
I think that's
where,
powerful.
I think you may have found your zone at that moment of when you are limited to certain products, certain things you can work with, and going, well, I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah, I felt so confident in that moment.
Yeah, well,
like,
how many people in your shoes would have felt or not
That's
in your
so
shoes,
cool.
but looking inward, going, "Oh, I could have done that too."
That's
There's no
so
way, right?
cool.
I have opened myself up to older generations. There were when I came in as an artist, I didn't know anybody. I was like, I was just armed with this excitement and this
Yeah.
newness, right?
Yes.
Whereas other artists and other people in my industry were kind of jaded.
Been there, done that. Yeah.
And I just was so happy to be there. I
Yeah.
had this artist that I was hired to assist, and I was just wanting to soak up the experience because I couldn't pay for that, right? And she hated my very existence, told me to F off, don't speak to her. And I had another very seasoned artist. She came to my rescue and she was like trying to fight the other lady. She was like, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
So it was such this charged experience of these face off of these two older women, one trying to protect me as a newbie and the other one like, like this little dog nipping at her heels. Like, get back. They put me in the back steaming clothes for this photo shoot. So I got paid all day to like steam clothes and talk to this other lady and pick her brain about knowledge, right? So I just opened myself up again to possibilities.
Yeah.
And I continually learn. So as I was going around teaching as an expert, I'm learning from also a younger generation. They're like, oh, does it have to be like this? And I tell them, art as well as life doesn't have to be told to you that this is the purpose. Everybody can get there with a different way of doing the math problem.
Yes.
As long as you get to the end result and you just get the end result. Like everybody's going to get there in a different way because all of our brains work differently,
Yes.
right? So it was just hitting my zone and having that that mentality, that newness, that openness.
Yeah.
That's where I feel like I've succeeded over my peers, regardless of their experience or what they've done. And giving myself this kind of like pep talk saying, there's no competition here.
Yeah.
Because what I'm good at, you may not even have any interest in. So having this competitive nature and trying to tear each other down, for what? We're competing for stuff. I don't even care about that job. I don't even like it. I don't even know how to do that. I have no interest in learning, or whatever it is. So it just goes back to what I was saying. There's room for everybody. There's a seat at the table. There's a niche. Nobody is you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I bring to the table. And I kind of hit this stride. Like, I have a really good reputation in my industry. And how I explain it to my students is as you succeed, it's like a pyramid. There's tons of makeup artists, these YouTube generation down here. But as you succeed and rise above, there's only a handful of people up here. So if you don't have good ethics, good moral values, good at all these things, you're not going to have a very good reputation, and you're going to kind of plateau and you're never going to get up
Because
here.
you have to choose to believe in legacy and making an impact beyond what you're amazing at. And that's exactly what you're talking about, ascending into legacy and significance.
Absolutely.
I
So I
love
feel
that.
like with writing and with this school is just kind of expanding that legacy.
Yes.
And, I may not be able, my body may give out on me. I have arthritis in both of my hands. I have trouble holding my coffee cup or writing in the morning. So I know I can't do this forever.
Yeah.
But what can I give you? I can give you my experience, I can give you my knowledge, and I can give you my stories.
It's incredible.
Wow. So that was the second part of my question, or the part two. What are you in pursuit for to make your second zone that you can find of like, I can get into that zone?
I think
you brought up many a thing.
Yeah,
but I'm
finally
like,
being
what-
happy with myself and not ashamed and being able to tell my
Bravo.
story where I can't cry
Yeah.
and I know that I'm healed. Like my second zone is just, it doesn't even feel like work,
Yeah.
right? It's just lifting everybody up.
Yes.
There's an African proverb called Ubuntu where it's their, the idea is that if you starve, we all starve. So there's a story of, these missionaries had visited this small village and they put fruit underneath a tree and they had all of these little kids lined up and they're like, okay, go, whoever can get the fruit, what they can have, whatever they can. And none of the kids moved. And they said, we said, go, like run for the finish line, run to go get that fruit. And still no child moved. And the little kids told them, Ubuntu, which they were like, what is that word? And they explained to them that if I run over there and get that food, then that means that my friend starves. And if they starve, I starve.
Wow.
And so we are all connected. That Chinese proverb, the red string.
Yeah.
If I can lift other people up and save them from feeling so poorly about themselves, and I think it makes the world a better place.
Yeah.
And so it seems very daunting task to take on to make the world better. But if you just do these small little things and lift up the people around you, if I can share my stories, if I can offer a bit of reflection
It does.
on my own trauma and say,
right.
hey, and lift up somebody else and save them the hurt and the pain, then that I think I've hit my second stride, my third stride, my fourth stride without even feeling like I'm working, because I'm happy being fulfilled by making other people happy.
And you are changing the world.
By makeup, I tell people that makeup is my mission, is like my ministry.
Yes.
I sit down and I come into spots and places, and I'm able to infiltrate your world in an unsuspecting way.
Exactly.
And if I'm able to leave just dropping one little seed of spirituality, of positivity, or whatever it is, then I've done my job. It doesn't even have to do with makeup.
Cher, thank you
Drop
so
Just
much
drop the mic right now.
for coming
I could have just kept going and going and going and
Oh,
going.
this is incredible.
But that was-
I love you guys.
What a story.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for giving me a
much.
platform to even talk about it. I
Oh,
really
honey,
appreciate
you
it.
have got tens of thousands of platforms coming your way, babe. I am just honored
My
you
only thing is
chose to
like,
come on with us.
Oh,
This is
'cause
how do we get
amazing.
it out there? Like, we're so new. Like, we don't even know what this podcast is going to be, but now this story has to get out
incredible.
there. There's not been a guest on
It's
yet.
incredible.
No offense to everyone who's been on that's been like this, you know?
Yeah.
Where you're like, people need to hear this. This isn't about corporate caffeine.
You are
This is
so
like,
inspiring.
yeah,
Thank you.
another freaking level, you know?
But it is corporate. It's about life. It's
It
so
is.
many people lay down and die, and there's so many self-deleting ideas,
Right?
right, that are attached to corporate
Yeah.
climbing the ladder
Yeah.
of these damning things that we tell ourselves. And so we get so depressed that we think about harming ourselves, or, you know, you feel so degraded with your family because of what's happening at work, or you can't show up as a father or a mother. You know, all of these things come from somewhere. And so it affects entrepreneurs,
Yes.
corporations. And that's why they talk so much about corporate culture.
That's critical.
Yeah.
Okay, so where can people find you, follow you, connect with you?
Oh my goodness.
I know, right?
So I have a fan page on Facebook. It's called Makeup Artistry by Cher. I'm also on Instagram at Cher the Love. It's CherThalove. The proper spelling was already taken, unfortunately. I had to get a little gangster with it. So. And then I am on Twitter under those same handles. However, I'm a terrible Twitterer.
Yeah, me too.
And when I was doing Real Housewives, I was just bombarded by that whole world that I
Yeah.
kind of just got off of Twitter because it affected my mental space. So,
And you have to be aware. Yeah, exactly.
so I have a website, and it's cherhukill.com, and it also will take you there if you type in Makeup Artistry by Cher.
Perfect.
And Global Prosperity University is a domain that's active, but there is the website is under construction.
Well, and as your book gets published and as everything, we will continue to update the links so
I
people
love
can
that.
find you and everything like that, because this does need to get out there. People
you.
need to hear this message.
I
So,
appreciate it.
all right, my dear. Well, thank
so
you.
much.
Such
That's awesome.
goodness. I love you guys.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Corporate Caffeine Podcast, please help us help you by subscribing. I also hope you'll find us on social media. You can follow me, Dacia Coffee, and my company, The Marketing Blender, by searching us on your favorite platform or checking out the show notes for the links. We bring this to you because we envision a business world full of meaning, connection, and prosperity for us all. Until next time, onward and upward.